Hello, welcome back to the Streamline CEO. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Emily Wise. She is a bookkeeper, and I have decided to have her on the podcast because I was attending a training and I learned so many things from her. And I've been doing this for 5 years and I still learned so many bookkeeping tips. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe you guys don't know some of these things too. So I decided to see if she wanted to come on, and here we are. So Emily, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us
Okay.
what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay. Thank you for having me. So I'm Emily Wise, as she said, and then I help service providers gain clarity around their numbers, save time, and then be able to make confident business decisions with done for you bookkeeping. So I found that most solopreneurs have struggles when they try and stay on top of their bookkeeping. So that leaves them without the financial insights that they really need to grow. So that's where I come in. I take bookkeeping off their plate and then they can focus on what they do best while still having that accurate, up to date financials to guide their decisions. So, my background is I'm a corporate accountant turned small business bookkeeper. I started my small business bookkeeping business a couple years ago, and I just love working with small businesses. I love helping them figure out what's going in their business, how they can grow, things like that. Personally, I live in Columbus, Ohio. I live here with my husband and my 4.5-year-old son and my 15-year-old Labradoodle. So that's a
Oh,
little bit
you
about
have a
me.
doggies? You have
I
doggies? I
do.
have two doggies.
Yeah.
Then I have a golden doodle, so very
Ah,
close.
yes,
And
very, very,
then
very.
I have 13 cats. We won't talk about
Okay.
that today, though.
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. I have a dog that sleeps most of the day because she's 15, and as you know, 15 is a very old age for that type of dog. So definitely not running around the house anymore at this point, but we still love her.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that you have a corporate background, like where you have worked with so many different sides of businesses, and then you decided you were like the small businesses. I want to work with them, and I love that type of transition. That's really really cool. It sounds like you really like it. Do you like it a lot better? A lot better.
Oh, so much better, so much better. I've always wanted my own business. I've always been fascinated by small businesses. Like that's one of my favorite things about my clients is like starting to learn about what they do too, and just kind of hearing how everybody runs their business and what makes them do what they do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. So, as we kind of talked about in your training last week, which, like I said, oh, this was so good. And I'm so excited for you to share some of these. But what are some common bookkeeping mistakes that you actually see a lot of small business owners make? And then also, like, what happens if we don't do, like, what are some of the consequences if they don't, like, if they keep doing these?
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest one I would start with would be mixing personal and business expenses. So that really puts you at a risk of missing a deduction. So let's say you're buying office supplies and you realize you don't have your business card with you. So then as a result, you'll need to remember to move that expense over to your business the next time you do your bookkeeping. And if you're anything like most entrepreneurs, you're not doing your bookkeeping that night or the next day. I mean, it may be months. So it's hard to remember that you need to move that over. And then you miss that deduction.
I actually forgot to do my bookkeeping for like 6 months one time. So, yeah, if I didn't have them separate, I would be in big, big trouble. So, for anyone listening, please have them separate, please. It'll make your life so much easier, even if you wait 6 months to do your books, right?
Yeah. Because and honestly, at that time, you think, oh, I'll remember this. I'll totally remember it. And then, life happens and you forget. So yeah, so that would be my top one. The next one, kind of, you played into that with waiting 6 months to do your bookkeeping, would be waiting until the end of the year to do a full year of bookkeeping. So it can add a lot of stress. I feel like the stress kind of compounds as the year goes on, right? Like it's just kind of like weighing on you, knowing like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is on my list. I know now it's going to take me longer because I haven't done it for a while, that kind of thing. And it also means you don't have the financial information you need throughout the year to make your confident decisions for your business. So, the more up-to-date information you have, the better decisions you can make. I will say, if you're just starting out and your business is super straightforward, lots of like recurring transactions and things like that, then you might be able to do it a little bit less often. I usually recommend monthly. Just get it out of the way, get it done, and then you have the information. And then obviously it helps with if you have been mixing personal and business expenses, they're a little more fresh in your mind too.
That's a great tip there. Yes.
Yeah. Because I mean, and I always like to tell my clients, like, it's going to happen. You are going to charge something to the wrong card at some point, and you just fix it and move on. Like, it's
Yeah.
just a matter of trying to do it right the majority of the time. So, and then the other one I wanted to talk about and the mistakes I see is a little more technical, but I think it is important and something that if you don't have a background, you're just not going to know it. So there's a few types of transactions that can be really tricky when you're first starting out. So the first one I like to talk to my clients about, or anyone who's trying to learn how to do bookkeeping, is merchant service fees. So those are the charges from payment processors. You actually receive the net of the amount your customer pays and the service fees. So let's say you charge your customer $1,000, the payment processor charges you 25, and payment processors, it's going to be something like Stripe, something like that. And then you receive the net of 975 into the bank account. So when you go to record that on your books, you should record 1,000 to revenue, 25, so that's the merchant service fees, and that should go into operating expenses. So breaking them out that way allows you to get a true picture of your revenue and costs, and also make sure you don't overstate either one. So that's one of them. The other two would be owner draws and distributions and tax payments. So for owner draws, those are things that you're taking out of your business for yourself. Unless you're an S Corp and you're paying yourself through payroll, those do not flow through the income statement. Instead, they're part of your equity. So those actually don't show up on your tax deductions because you're just taking money out of your business that you own. And then tax payments are payments on your personal income taxes. So even if that income is related to your business, they're coming through your personal taxes. And so they're not a business expense. So again, you can pay them through your business bank account, but they are really treated more as an owner draw where you're taking money out of your business to pay them, which you totally can do. It's just that they're not a valid business expense. So those are a little more technical, but I like to throw those out there because I think they're very common mistakes.
Yeah, I probably have made every single one of those at one point. Probably still
That's
currently
fair.
making at least I'm
That's
like
fair.
gonna rethink all this through. I'm like, okay, am I making any of these
Yeah.
mistakes? And then go
Yeah.
and fix them because that's you can always start now, right?
Yes,
And then so
completely.
this is like great. So if someone's actually starting either a new business or they're really getting into actually doing the bookkeeping, hopefully properly or as properly as
Mhm.
they know, right? What are like 3 to 5 like critical bookkeeping tasks that you should prioritize like within like the next 6 months, or even if you wanted to do those more routinely? And why would
Mhm.
those be like the ones that you would want to do out of, the dozen that there are?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're a completely new business, I recommend you kind of set yourself up for success by registering your business for as an LLC and then also getting an EIN. So there's lots of legal
Mm.
structures you can use, but LLC is generally the most entrepreneurs start with. It protects the owner from some liabilities and it also allows for pass-through taxation. So then your income or loss is just reported through on your personal income taxes. I always like to say I am not a lawyer or a CPA, so always ask them questions if you have questions on like what legal entity you should use. But again, LLC is a good place to start. And then employer identification number, an EIN. Obviously, you need that if you want to hire anyone, but it's also sometimes necessary for opening bank accounts, business bank accounts. It also helps you maintain your personal identity protections since you don't have to use a social security number whenever you're filling out a form. So I always feel much better sharing my EIN versus my social security number.
And keep that super handy. Like that's one thing
Yeah.
I learned. The ironic part, here's the little funny story, is that I ended up emailing myself and I had the subject line as in case you forget this or in case you
It's
can't
great.
find this. And so it was so funny. So I have it saved in like many places. So I do
Yeah.
not like lose it because you need it for so many things you don't even realize
Yeah.
it. And so yeah, that's just a little funny takeaway there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you memorize your social security number, but I don't know how long you have to be in business to have memorized your EIN. I mean, I don't even remember what mine starts with at this point. So
I don't either.
yeah, yeah. So it's good. You just have to have it handy. And in the next thing I would say I would recommend if you're just starting out is opening a business checking account. So you can always open savings accounts, credit cards. You can get the whole thing if you need to, but at least one separate account is critical so you can not mix your business and personal expenses. So it kind of goes back to that one. I will say if you're trying to avoid minimum balance fees when you're first starting out, which I completely get. Everyone has that issue when they're first starting
Oh
out.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Then I recommend a bank called Relay. It's an online bank and they don't have a minimum balance fee. And they also allow you to have multiple accounts. So you can have an account where you put your savings for taxes, where you segregate some for other things. And that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
actually the bank that I use, and having the multiple
yeah.
accounts has allowed me to be able to actually start thinking about saving for taxes properly. And that part has been super helpful. That literally just happened last year though, properly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's super
Yeah.
exciting. So, yeah,
It's
Relay. We both recommend it at this point.
I
So,
do.
there we
I
go.
do. It's a good one. It's a good one. So the third thing I would say is a good thing to think about when you are starting out or just kind of getting to your bookkeeping would be deciding where and when you'll do your bookkeeping. So it's kind of like the first step in the process,
Mm,
right? There's so many options for where you want to do your bookkeeping. The least expensive is going to be your Excel or Google sheet where you're just listing your income, listing your expenses, and then calculating the difference there, which will be your profit. The next step up would be a template that you can purchase, which is used in Excel or Google Sheet. That gives you added functionality like a standard chart of accounts. So those are just the categories that you're using to group your expenses and revenue. And then you can usually customize that too. And then the data generally will flow into some standard reports as well for you, which is a nice thing to have. The next step up is going to be your bookkeeping software, but you're doing the bookkeeping still yourself. So QuickBooks and
mm.
Xero are my favorite, but Carolee, I know you love Ways, and that's good to know too. So you mentioned before
Yeah.
that it's pretty straightforward for you, which is great if you're doing your own.
And I honestly started out using Wave because it was free. Like it was importing the
Yeah.
transactions. I could categorize them all for free. Unfortunately, that is a paid version now, but it was so easy. So, I'm like, whatever. It's still affordable. Wave,
Yeah.
it's especially if you're starting out, it's way cheaper than like a QuickBooks. It's a much quicker learning curve, like than QuickBooks, because I started with QuickBooks and then ran away. I mean, I might go
That's
back
great.
to it eventually,
Yeah.
especially if I hire a bookkeeper in the future, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
do
most
recommend
bookkeepers
QuickBooks.
either work in Xero or QuickBooks, but I get it. That QuickBooks has functionality that can be challenging if you're not a bookkeeper or an accountant. So I 100% get that. But a system, what it does, it allows you to connect your bank accounts and credit card accounts most likely. There's always that random bank that doesn't connect, but the majority of the big ones are going to connect. So you can import your transactions and then you can use roles to categorize. So you can say things like, okay, every time the system sees Zoom come through, put that to software. So you just don't have to think quite as much
Mm.
or do as much manual work. And then they all have canned reports, which is nice. So you don't, that'll get you those reports that you can review. And then finally, obviously, the last one would be to outsource it to a bookkeeper. So takes it off your list would be the top thing there. It's usually done much more frequently than most people handle their own bookkeeping. So it gives you that information more quickly. It allows for more accuracy unless you have bookkeeping background. Obviously, there are people who do, but in general, bookkeepers are going to be the experts on that. And then a lot of bookkeepers can also provide more insight and kind of a better understanding of the numbers. So like I like to, especially with new clients, I'll walk them through the reporting I'm giving to make sure they understand kind of what they're looking at and how they can use it. So some things to consider though, when you're kind of trying to make that decision would be, how many transactions do you have? How complex is your accounting? Payroll, loans, things like that. And then lastly, how much time do you have? Because that obviously factors into it as well.
And
And then,
especially if you're someone that does it once a year, it might be worth just paying someone to do it.
yeah,
It's definitely on my wish list. I don't do it once a
yeah,
year anymore, thank goodness, but it's still not quite as frequent as it should be.
yeah, understood. All entrepreneurs have a lot on their plates. Like that's just the way it is. And so if bookkeeping's not your thing, it's not going to be at the top of that list for sure. So I'll be honest, I do my client bookkeeping and then I'm like, oh, I need to do my bookkeeping too. Like because it's, you focus a lot on your clients first. Like that's why you got into the business,
Yeah.
right?
They're mundane tasks for your own
Yeah,
when you're doing it for yourself, right? It's just more
I
energizing
agree.
to do them for clients.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So I'm leaving this to the last one because I feel like the other ones are really important to do first. But once you actually sit down to do your bookkeeping, I like people to focus on these three tasks. So don't look at all of the different things you can do in bookkeeping. But first step, download and categorize your transactions. So that just means grouping them in so that you can analyze them better. So your software, your office supplies, things like that. Reconcile your accounts. So currently, we were talking about that a little bit before, but all it is, it
I
can
need
be
to
a
do
formal
that.
reconciliation. if you use bookkeeping system, or just add up your transactions and make sure they match the activity on your bank and credit card statement. So if you're using a spreadsheet, just sum them up and make sure that it matches the activity. The only goal there is just to make sure you're not missing any transactions and that you don't have duplicates. And then finally, review your reports or results. So depends on what system you're using, but at a minimum, you can see, did you have a profit or loss for the month? What were your highest income earners? What were your highest expenses? Are you using all of the expenses that you're paying for? Things like that. Those are like the 4 things I would really put on the top of the list if you're just starting out.
Yeah,
Kind
the
of a lot.
biggest
I don't
thing
know.
that
Did I give too many?
no, you're good. I love them all. But the expenses part, the expenses that you're not using, I have saved myself so much money because I looked at it, I was like, wait, I forgot I was even paying for that. Like when I actually started paying attention to my books a lot more frequently, it has been, I would personally think that it has absolutely helped me make better financial decisions, but also know it like how much more revenue I really need to bring in to hit my goals, right?
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
I mean, I wish it took me far less time to learn that, but we'll
Yeah,
take it, right? We all learn at our own pace.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like when you're
So,
starting out, there's so many tasks, right? Like once you get certain things set up and they're running, like you have more time to focus on other areas of your business. But it's really hard when you're first starting out to do everything, wear all the hats for sure.
oh yeah, I'm so glad I don't have to wear all the hats anymore. I think
Yeah.
bookkeeping might be next on my list, so I might be reaching out.
Yeah.
Who
I,
knows?
I don't have a lot of people who say they regret outsourcing their bookkeeping because in general, they're just like,
Oh,
thank you, it's done. I appreciate that.
sweet. So, can you share a success story of how
Yeah.
like your bookkeeping services have helped a client achieve like a specific financial goal or like increasing profitability, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm currently wrapping up, it's January right now. So we're wrapping up 2024 reporting for all my clients. And I have 2 clients that almost doubled their profit in 2024. And so by no means am I saying that's due to just bookkeeping. They have worked very hard to grow their businesses, but both have provided feedback to me that what helped them was having those results at their fingertips each month. And allowing them to make more confident decisions and allowing them to change course as they needed to throughout the year. So if they saw a trend there, they could always change right away, which helps. And both also have said that it helped them to better understand their financial reports. So like I mentioned before, I don't just send the reports. I meet with them, especially new clients, to say, like, here's what you can see, here's what you can review for, things like that. And then I'm always available for questions if they pop up too.
Yeah, I love that because I've definitely jumped into looking at some reports, and besides the profit and loss sheet, I think
Yeah.
that's the only one I kind of understand. Like that's
Yeah.
like I don't think I really fully understand the rest of them. So like obviously if I'm not understanding the reports as well, I'm not understanding everything about my revenue, right? Which means
Yeah.
I'm only getting a piece of the puzzle. So yes, this is super important. You might have just, I don't know. We'll talk later. But yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
definitely want to understand the financials much more. So outsourcing your bookkeeping can absolutely help that, understanding that as a whole and having someone to be able to ask those questions too as well. Because I'm sure you see the trends and different things when you're doing the books for them too, which then you point out. So that's like
Yeah.
you're so essentially outsourcing your bookkeeping is saving that CEO time, right? They're not sitting
Hmm.
down and having to do it or remember to do it. And then you're also making sure that those reports, they understand the reports that they're getting. I don't see why everyone doesn't outsource bookkeeping. Hmm.
I
All
think it
right.
always comes down to budget, right? Like it
Yep.
does, it does. But yeah, it can be very, very, very beneficial for most businesses. So,
I love that. I love that. So, all right. How can our listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do?
yeah, definitely. So my website is emilywisellc.com. You can learn more about my background and services, and then you can also request a discovery call, free discovery call if you're interested in the done for you bookkeeping. You can also find me at Instagram. It's Emily Wise LLC as well. And then I have a free guide to 1099s that you can download, and that link is in my Instagram bio. So you can help prepare yourself for next year. Get yourself set up for 1099 success.
I love that. Also, everything is going to also be in the show notes to make it even easier to go connect with Emily and ask her all of your questions that you have now that we've raised about bookkeeping. So, all right, until next week, I hope you guys have an amazing day and we'll talk next week.